This time on Poll Hub, we're talking about friends and clothes. No, you haven't accidentally clicked on the Every Outfit podcast. We're looking at clothing trends in the workplace, including our own, and friendships as a social connector and mental health predictor. See, we can find data to talk about anything. In fact, we finish with a pop cultural fun fact that connects Sean Connery with Mickey Mouse. Really, stick around. We've got a lot to do. And hi, everybody. Welcome to Poll Hub. I'm JD Dapper.
I'm Barbara Carvalho.
I'm Lee Maringoff.
So we often have, kind of heavy or serious topics on the show. And with all the seriousness and heaviness going on in the world, we thought we'd take a little bit of a lighter start on the show today with a poll that we found from Gallup that was just out in the last few weeks about what people are wearing to work. And there's a lot about this because work has changed so much, right? I mean, so many people are on Zoom in sweatpants down below and at some top that's appropriate for work up above. That's what their work day is. And then some people are still coming into the office. More people are coming in. But the office attire has changed really dramatically in the last 20 years, but it's changed again, really, even since the pandemic. So we wanted to get into this also because we've had our own discussions about this at the poll. So this study, a Gallup poll, shows that 41% of workers in the U.S. wear business casual to work. 31% wear street clothes to work, 23% wear uniforms. And then there's a little bit of a divide here. Women are a little bit more in the business casual. 51% of women wear business casual, 30% wear street clothes, and 14% wear uniforms. So let's open this up. Lee, I remember when I started working at the poll in 2017, the people that I worked with said, well, you can't wear jeans. And I wore jeans. Because I had already gone through this transition where going in startup world, going into VCs and banks and places, everybody was wearing nice jeans, but they're wearing jeans.
Well, also, you were director of innovation,
Yeah.
Jay, so you got a pass.
I was innovating fashion. So, Lee, what do you think about all this with the changes that have taken place over this period of time?
Yeah, my guess is it was already starting and then the pandemic came on, and I think we never turned back. During the pandemic, I would periodically open up my closet and see a lineup of suits that were lonely because they were certainly not being taken to the cleaners on a regular basis. I also can't recall the last time I went to a place to buy new clothes because everything seems to be, there's just a lot of assortment I can still pluck from. So I think that we've gotten definitely into a whole new world. I do call when I'm dressed for work, I do get in a suit still. I still feel it's my uniform of sorts. Even if I'm doing TV stuff, I tend to, feel it's okay to have a dress shirt and a sports coat as opposed to suit and tie. So I think the whole thing is toned down in terms of the dress to the T's. I was going to say that right now I'm in a tuxedo and you can't tell, but I thought you heard
You did hear a dog, and that's a question of can you bring your dogs to work? That's another
That's
episode.
a whole nother segment. But I think this has been a transition for quite some time. You mentioned, at least the last 20 years. And I don't know if grunge fashion of Gen X in the 90s, kind of started this whole dress down sense of things. It is both, I think, generational. And I think also it has to do with the sector and the expectations. There are still places where suits are pretty mandatory. Dressing down means, a blazer and khakis, but a tie still exists. But I think for most of us, I think I, recognized it with Gen X and millennials who just assumed that, a nice pair of slacks and a pullover sweater was more than enough. I think it's really interesting that women still feel that they need to dress up more than men. I think there's an expectation. I think there's probably a little bit less respect for women that may, come in high tops and a t-shirt with jeans. In fact, when you look generationally, if you look at Gen X and millennials, even if they do wear jeans to work, they're likely to be wearing some really nice shoes as opposed to sneakers. Although sneakers have become incredibly high end. And if you want to spend $1,000 for sneakers or have sneakers with heels, Prada and Chanel have a style just for you.
It's funny you mentioned sneakers because Kevin McCarthy, former Speaker of the House, famously wore sneakers into the Oval Office for meeting with the president in the last couple of years. I don't remember exactly when it was. And it's true that you see all these pictures in Capitol Hill of people of men wearing sneakers, although they don't necessarily
Yes.
look like sneakers, but they're sneakers with suits. So even there, that's taking place. But
Yeah.
I want to get back to the gender divide, though. I do
Yeah.
think, isn't it sexist somewhat that a guy can walk into, these offices, tech offices, whatever, in a pair of jeans and some sneakers and maybe not a ripped tee, but like maybe just a
No.
polo shirt.
Yeah.
And a woman walking in like that, I think you're right, is going to
It is not acceptable. Absolutely not. And I think women also take a risk of dressing down too much because although we used to say clothes makes the man, I think also in a work setting, clothes also do make the woman. And I think there is a sense, particularly for women who are managers and who need to be able to present a sense of authority, that you need to dress in those terms where men definitely don't have that requirement. And in fact, I think the dress down kind of jeans, cool sneaker look, with the pullover actually makes men in the workplace probably more approachable and less of an authority, which for them is a good thing.
Yeah, Jay, when you left the world of TV as a full-time occupation, I remember you said something like you cleaned out your closet and kept one suit. So
Yeah.
what does your closet now look like? Have you replaced it with a bunch of casual clothes, or do you have do you still have a closet? I don't know.
Yeah. No, I don't have that one suit anymore. That was a long enough time ago that I'm not sure either fashion wise or fit wise it would work. But I do have it, and it's mainly, sadly, for funerals and events like that it gets hauled out for. Yeah, no, I mean, you see what I wear, and sometimes it's more casual. Others, I do feel like I can't come in a t-shirt. In the middle of summer, I'll do a polo shirt, but I try and do kind of nice polo shirts. And I do wear jeans, but I don't wear ripped and faded jeans. So I feel the same way, Barb, that I think that you suggested that women feel in the way. You have to elevate it a little bit to be taken seriously. And I got to tell you, when I was in the startup days, we would walk into VCs. These are the places that are doling out $1 million and $10 million checks. And the people walking around, in some cases, they looked like they were in a dorm room. And I was surprised.
We certainly know what that looks like around here.
Yeah. So I think there is a generational thing. I think that's the other point.
Very
that
much
you brought
so.
up that's totally
Yeah.
on point is I am a boomer, right? And so casual for me, what I think of as casual at work after a history of wearing a suit every day on TV, which you don't have to do anymore, even on TV. I think that my perspective is definitely generational.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gen X and millennials are taking over those higher spots in organizations, and certainly not only their management styles, but their dress as well is making those changes. Another generational thing that we have been looking at as well is, after the pandemic and the social isolation that so many of us had, and the disconnection from not just routine in a work sense or in a family sense, but also just a routine in terms of how we socialize. Pew has done a research study just this October on friendship and what does friendship mean to Americans. And friendship actually means a whole heck of a lot. It may be defined a little differently than I think we have seen it in the past, but 61% of adults say having close friends is extremely or very important to them in having a fulfilling life. Now, comparatively, it's actually, people find it more important than being married, which is 23%, having kids, 26%, or even having a lot of money, 24%. So these social connections are very important to Americans. And I think that the science has showed us how important it is as well. The pandemic has certainly seen a rise in this disconnect, a rise in depression, social anxiety, and friendships can help stem the tide. So, this is not a new issue. Back in 2000, Robert Putnam had a popular book called Bowling Alone, where he looked at the deterioration of institutions in the United States. So those institutions have continued to deteriorate. In other words, a number of people who go to community events, who are connected to a church or clubs or other things. Are we becoming just more disconnected?
I think what's interesting is we did a segment on this with a guest from the AEI, the American Enterprise Institute, 2.5 years ago, August of 2021. So we were in the midst of the pandemic, and they had done some research. He had done some research that showed that we had fewer close friendships and we were, drifting apart. And then there's this new Pew research from October showing 61% of adults say having close friends is extremely or very important to having a fulfilling life. More important than being married, having children, or a lot of money, like you said, and a narrow majority say they have between 1 and 4 close friends. And a lot of them, 38%, say they have 5 or more close friends. And only 8% say they have no close friends. So I guess what's interesting, and my question here is, I don't think that what we saw from bowling alone up to the study that we cited in 2021, I don't think that's gone away, this sense that we're growing more isolated. Yet this survey seems to suggest that Americans still have a lot of close friends.
Although there are generational differences. Lee, you don't have any friends.
I say that a lot, and I have a lot of people I know. I talk mostly to myself and do what I want to do.
You enjoy your own company.
I enjoy my own company. No, I have a few people I stay in daily touch with, which I guess you would consider a close friend. But yeah, I'm struck by, what we've gone through and how people communicate and how, going to a movie theater with a few friends would seem like a totally weird thing to do right now, unless Barbie's playing. I just think that, a lot of what we do right now is sort of on our own and looking at the world from our own iPhone.
But not to age you here, Lee, but almost half of those in this poll, 49%, over 65 and over, say they have 5 or more close friends. Only 32% of those under 30 say the same. So, Athen, you're the only one here under 30. You're in college. Do you have, sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Do you have 5 or more close friends? Or
I'm saying yes. I'm thinking yes.
No, I would say so. I definitely would say, like, when I think of my best friends, I would say I have 5 or more.
So this poll,
and that is unusual. Not just that number, Jay, but a narrow majority, 53%, say they have between 1 and 4 close friends, but it's much less among people who are under 30. So I don't know if the college atmosphere is something that works to address that, where you are connected in class, at home, in a lot more settings than you might be elsewhere.
Do you keep up with high school friends?
I have like 3 close friends from high school, and I don't talk to anybody else. I just talk to them, and that's it.
So your close friends aren't here at college, at Marist?
I would say my 3 closest friends are at home from high school. But I think I do have close friends at college, but I think it also helps that, like, I live with them. I see them every day. So yeah, I think definitely I would be in an outlier because I see these people all the time. I think when it gets hard when you move out and you become distanced.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that this generational divide exists, though? If you look around and you look at your parents or uncles and aunts or whatever, do you see people your age having fewer close friends than they do? Or vice versa, or the same?
I don't know. I think my parents, I feel like, kind of isolate themselves a little bit. I don't know.
They're like Lee.
I see in my daily life like the opposite. I would say the older people in my life, I don't know if they like stay in touch as much with close friends. But I also can see the generational divide because I do think my generation stays in touch more online. So I think there's that divide as well.
Yeah.
The other thing too is back in 2000 when Putnam was when Putnam had his Bowling Alone. He was looking at the deterioration of institutions and the disconnect that people had. But I think one of the things that is interesting, and although we may be seeing some of this disconnect, I think what this study also shows is that although younger people are not necessarily likely to have as many friends, they are more likely to be able to make new friends if they are to lose a friend than people who are older. And the other thing that I think was interesting is how people are making friends. Bowling Alone pointed to literally the bowling leagues, the clubs, the community activities, the church, the school. And although school is still a big deal, especially for those folks who have children or are going to school, I think work has become more of a place where people make connections much more seriously than they did in the past. I think for past generations, and perhaps you can speak even more to this, Lee, work was seen as business and personal was separate. And you didn't really want to, merge the two because you needed perhaps to make, decisions that personally wouldn't feel really good and still maintain those business relationships. But I think that is one place where it has really changed. And our work environment has become a place where we make more of those connections.
No, I think that's true because work is not necessarily 9 to 5 days a week. It sort of becomes
there's that too.
I also was thinking about this notion that the modes of communication both make it easier to stay in touch, but don't make it for the kind of close friend that an older generation might define it as. In other words, staying in touch to me is not necessarily being a close friend, but if I was younger and I had 15 people I was communicating with every day, they'd be close friends, I think. So I think it has to do with what we're calling it and maybe how we're defining it in terms of whether it's a big deal
and as
or
we've
not.
learned from Zoom, it's very different to be in person and to experience things together in a kind of a close setting than it is to just connect virtually.
Well, our fun fact today talks about something that people used to do a lot, and was to go to a movie and sit in a theater. And the question, which was posed in 1968 by Harris Survey, if you had to choose between going to a James Bond movie or a Walt Disney movie, which one would it be? A Bond or a Disney movie? At national audience at that point, 60% went with the Walt Disney movie, 34% went to see James Bond here, and 6% refused. I'm not quite sure why I would refuse that question, but maybe I didn't know what one of those was. So on the one hand, this surprised me because I can't remember going to a Disney movie, but I do remember when I was younger going to a James Bond movie. But yet for the nation, that wasn't the case. I have my theories on this response pattern, but I don't know. What do you guys say?
Well, what's interesting is I am a child of the Walt Disney movies where there was always some catastrophe that occurred early on in the movie, usually to a parent of the main character that they then, had to take that journey and overcome. So I kind of like James Bond movies more because there was more action, it was more suspenseful, and I didn't really I wasn't attached necessarily to the characters that were having to go through this heroic journey and come out on the other side.
I wonder. So I want to hear, Lee, what your theory is. James Bond movies in 1968, if I'm doing my math right, depending on whether you count Casino Royale as a James Bond movie, there had only been, depending on when October 68.
Oh, well,
I don't know release
That's
dates.
true. That's true. I probably actually wouldn't have been allowed in a James Bond movie.
There had only been 4 Bond movies, and there was no ratings yet. There was no PG and R, any of those kinds of things. That came just shortly thereafter. And Walt Disney movies at this time were super either cartoons or beach blanket bingo, right? Walt Disney movies now are like Pixar and lots of other things. So somebody looking at this now might say, what? I don't even, get this. I mean, at that time, this is like comparing apples and oranges practically. And I wonder if part of this had to do with people thinking about a family like taking their
Ooh.
kids to a movie, like
Hmm.
because as opposed to a date night, which was what movies became later. I don't know. What's your theory, Lee?
You're going to laugh at my theory. So I looked
Okay.
at the survey, and it was conducted in October 1968. And you have a theory that I turn every topic into politics. So what was going on in October of 1968? We were at the final stages of a horrendous political year with obviously political assassinations and also a choice between Richard Nixon, Hubert Humphrey, and George Wallace coming up that week, next week. And I maybe people at that point saw the James Bond thing as just a little too, out there, too intense, and Walt Disney a little more escapist at that point. And that's my nutty theory of politics and Walt Disney.
So now that I'm looking at what the title of this study was, remember we pull questions from surveys. These are face-to-face surveys, so lots of questions. This was the violence study. So this was a survey about violence in America, which in October of 1968, your point's well taken. I mean, the America was out of control. I mean, the perception was that we were sliding into chaos. And yeah, I think you're right, Lee.
I'm looking down at the
absolutely.
sponsor, the National Commission on the Causes and Prevention of Violence. My God, I finally hit one.
Congratulations. It only took till now. And from a survey from 1968, which is, after all, I think your favorite year in American history.
Well,
after all,
not my
you taught
favorite
a
year,
class.
but yes.
You taught a class just on 1968. So I
Yes,
think
yes.
it's an important year.
Yes.
That'll do it for Poll Hub this week.
Poll Hub is produced by the Marist Poll at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Mary Griffith is our executive producer. Casey Schaff is our production supervisor.
The Poll Hub team includes Athen Hollis, Hannah Tone, and Rebecca Hendricks.
If you enjoy Poll Hub, please consider leaving a review. Positive reviews help other listeners like you find us.
If you'd like to learn more about polling and survey science, check out the Marist Poll Academy, our free online learning portal.
If you have questions for us, tweet them at us at Marist Poll.
Remember, you can always tell your smart speaker to play Poll Hub.
And with any luck, it'll cooperate.
Finally, wherever you listen to Poll Hub, there is a subscribe button.
Click it and the latest episode will be ready for you in your podcasting app as soon as it's released.
We'll
See you next time.
He will pour in your ear, but his lies can't disguise what you feel. For a golden girl knows when he's kissed her, it's the kiss of death from Mr. Goldfinger.